It's our second video lesson, and in this lesson we will talk about oxidation number of elements in their compounds. I think you are wondering why teacher said us in the first term that sulfur has charge -2 and nitrogen has charge -3. But when we were describing their oxides, for example when we took sulfur dioxide, we found that charge of sulfur is +4. When we were finding charge of nitrogen in a dinitrogen pentoxide, we found out that it's equal to +5. Why it's so? Let's take nitrogen as an example and talk about nitrogen. Nitrogen has 7 electrons, and when we'll write its electronic configuration, on first shell we will have 2 electrons, on second shell we will have 5 electrons. And please try to remember that I said to you that every element of periodic table wants to be like noble gases. For example, if nitrogen wants to be like a helium, he needs to give 5 electrons because he has 7 and helium has only 2. If nitrogen wants to be like a neon, it needs to take 3 electrons to become like a neon, because neon has 10 electrons, nitrogen has only 7. Charges +5 and -3 just show us how many electrons nitrogen needs to give or needs to take to become like a noble gas element. And because of this, nitrogen can have different charges. For example, in ammonia, nitrogen has charge -3. In a dinitrogen pentoxide, nitrogen has charge +5. That's why we can say the charge or oxidation number are the same as the valency, but they have different signs, plus or minus. And question is, how can we find these oxidation numbers of elements? And answer is, sum of the oxidation numbers or charges for all of the elements in the compounds needs to be 0. Let's solve 2 examples, and I think that you will understand. First example, we have potassium nitrate, and question is, find oxidation number of nitrogen. We know that oxidation number for potassium is always +1. Oxidation number of oxygen is always -2. But oxidation number of nitrogen, we don't know, that's why we'll put just X. Sum of all charges needs to be 0. We have only 1 potassium, only 1 nitrogen, but we have 3 oxygens. That's why we'll multiply oxygens oxidation number or charge by 3. +1 plus X plus 3 times -2 needs to be equal to 0. When we solve this equation, we will find out that X is equal to 5. Let's take second example. In our second example, we have potassium dichromate. And the question is the same. Find out oxidation number of chromium. We know that potassium's charge is always +1, and the charge of oxygen is always -2. But we don't know oxidation number of chromium. Let's take X. We have 2 potassiums, that's why we'll multiply potassium's charge by 2. We have 2 chromiums, that's why we'll multiply chromium's charge by 2. And we have 7 oxygens, that's why we'll multiply oxygen charge by 7. And sum of all of these charges needs to be 0. When we solve this equation, we will find out that X is equal to +6. This means that oxidation number of chromium in this compound is +6. Thank you for your attention. Please try to understand everything and be ready for lesson.